F1, or F1 the movie, whatever it's supposed to be called, is from Joseph Kosinski, director of Top Gun Maverick and Tron Legacy. He also helped make the story for the script, which was written by Aaron Kruger, who worked on Top Gun Maverick, The Ring, and some Transformers sequels. My few regular viewers may remember my last video where I said that I watched this one as part of my first 4 movies from AMC A-List weekend. A comment under that video praised me for being able to watch so many of them and still come up with all that to say about those 2. That's kind of a moment of imposter syndrome for me because while I was able to say probably more about the 2 movies I reviewed than I had to say about any review for a while, I don't think I really had much to say about either of the other 2 movies. Going into that weekend, I was planning on talking about F1 instead of Lilo and Stitch, but I decided I had more to say about the latter. This one is about, obviously, a Formula 1 driver. An American played by Brad Pitt, who was a big deal back then, but now has pretty much stepped away from that to become a moderately successful NASCAR driver. But now he's coming back to F1. It's a decent enough story, but what really elevates it is the racing scenes. They are fun and exhilarating. The main complaint people who don't like car racing use is that it's just people driving around in a circle. Well, this one brings you up close to the action and makes driving in a circle seem like the most intense thing ever. But the scenes without action are also interesting, and Brad Pitt has enough charisma to carry the sports story. Unfortunately, at over 2.5 hours long, it does tend to overstay its welcome. But overall, this is a good sports movie, enhanced by some especially good racing scenes. This is probably going to play particularly well with racing fans, but anybody who's interested in sports stories or just action scenes that push you in the driver's seat as the world goes speeding past should also have fun with it.
Drive right out there on the ragged edge.
He doesn't believe you can drive anymore.
How long before you find out if you're really good?
You just want to race again.
Are you really lucky?
You get back in that car, you'll die.
Superman was written and directed by James Gunn, director of the Suicide Squad and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The new head of DC, and he's restarting the whole cinematic universe with this one. And that universe shows promise so far. This is a more faithful recreation of the character than Snyder's version, which I like too, but this is probably the best way to go, putting him in a more lighthearted adventure where he can be a beacon of hope. There's probably a lot of Superman comics that tell stories as dark as the Snyderverse, but the character is more than that. I'm not saying that it definitely shouldn't have made him dark. I know the initial plan was to make the DC universe dark to set itself apart from Marvel's light and jokey universe. But every now and then, even Marvel would make something semi-dark. Why not occasionally make something where Superman can be Superman? Here, he's what Superman stands for right from the beginning. The real world might not see him as much the ray of hope in this nightmare year that Wonder Woman became in her nightmare year, like I predicted he would. But it's still definitely effective at being that to a seemingly smaller audience. Okay, enough comparing this to the Snyderverse. That was in the past. I don't even think Snyder cares as much about continuing the Snyderverse as his fans do. And if this really is the start of a new universe, it's off to a great start. It doesn't waste time on the origin stuff. Everybody already knows where Superman came from. He's not even the first superhero in the world of this movie. The opening text said it all started 3 centuries ago, which I hope they get back to that. Superheroes in 1700s. But anyway, it takes place at this point where everything's established, and he isn't even the only hero in this movie. In this case, who really needs to build that kind of stuff slowly? This shows James Gunn working outside of his usual wheelhouse, a movie with no cynicism or dark humor, and is more in line with the Reeves movies. But his style does kind of come through in some scenes, with some of its humor and even a few action scenes that feel like they belong in Guardians of the Galaxy, and that sense of fun elevates this. The action works and the occasional humor helps. Without having to bring in some origin story for everything, it tells a tale that feels like it could have come right in the middle of a comic storyline, but is still accessible to newcomers. And it's an interesting enough one. It's complex, but not too complex. It sets up the universe without having any of the teasers feel cynical. It has concepts and scenes that give it a sense of, I guess, whimsy. And it shows Gunn's unlikely sense of heart and character. Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Hoult, is a particularly despicable villain. He exists in the space between cartoonishly evil and the personification of everything wrong with the modern world, with an edge towards the latter. He's powerful, he's corrupt, he's associated with foreign dictators and is stoking the flames of war. He creates fake internet slander, everything you can think of. When the movie says he's evil, you believe it. David Cornsweet also does a good job of playing Superman, a version reminiscent of Christopher Reeves. James Gunn proves yet again why he's the best voice in superhero movies working today. Whether or not the world is still interested in the whole of the superhero universe is kind of up in the air, no pun intended. But even as somebody who's kind of succumbing to Marvel fatigue, I want more of this. Superman is finally done right again, and it is glorious.